Madeline sighed heavily. Yes, what a family the Adamses are. If I'd seen them from the outside, I'd never have realized what could be going on inside the walls of this house. There was nowhere to go. Almost all the cards had been dealt. I know who you are, you bitch. I know all about you. Name, Cynthia retorted. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her hands were fumbling around the antique table, trying to find something to throw at the villain. A bird's eye view of the village would make you think that all the houses were printed on a huge printer. All the same similar. Brown roof screen hedges, expensive flower beds, the color of the walls. It was as if the architect, in a bad mood, had decided to make the worst plan for the village and the buildings in his life. Madeline looked at the pictures. Paradise Corner. That was the name of the village for rich people who didn't count money. But judging by what had happened there recently, it shouldn't be called that. It should be called Hell's Cauldron. Madeline Walker was a well-known detective who had solved many of the tangled stories of in town. She was not at all like a person who possessed nerves of steel and iron grip. But that was only at first glance. The girl graduated from the Pegatsaiskaya Academy in the capital of our homeland, but conquer the criminal case was not in a hurry. It is much more interesting to unravel the intricate tangle of crimes than to write off hanging sitting in the musty room cops. Madeline opened her detective agency Eagle Eye recently. Helped partner Brandon, a man very stately and in love with Madeline. Of course the girl knew it, but she had her own plans for her life. Brandon was the son of a rich banker, so he was able to rent a room and buy the necessary furniture, supplies, advertising, and a lot of nonsense, without which it is impossible to exist detective agency. Naturally, Brandon's main condition was cooperation. Madeline had to dedicate the guy in all matters relating to the investigation of cases. The girl did not like this arrangement, but if she refused, would not be a detective agency Eagle Eye. Madeline Walker has successfully solved many cases involving robbery, child abduction, and even murder. Therefore, to the young detective quickly lined up a queue of people who could not find the truth with the help of the police. The other day, Walker received a phone call. The woman's voice in the receiver trembled. Speech was unintelligible, so Madeline politely offered to discuss everything on the spot at the agency. The client arrived the same day. She was in mourning, with a tightly tied black scarf on her head, bruises under her eyes, and a pale face. Good afternoon. My name is Jody. It was me who called you today, the woman said, blowing her nose convulsively into her handkerchief. I need your help in a very delicate case. The police, unfortunately, couldn't do it. My daughter is dead. Please accept my condolences. Madeline said quickly. She picked up a small tape recorder and turned it on. If you don't mind, I'll record our conversation so I don't miss any details. Yes, of course. Do as you please. Madeline, you're my last hope. I'm being bribed. I'm being lied to. I can't believe my little girl died of a stroke. She was so young. It's all so strange. Take your time, said Walker, fixing a stray strand of hair. Tell the story thoughtfully. Start at the beginning. Would you like some tea or coffee? Just water, Jody sobbed. Madeline poured water from a carafe and set it in front of the woman. My Kate has always been a very good girl. Jody began. She always did well in her studies. She graduated from high school with a gold medal. My husband and I decided to send her to the capital we had plenty of money. Back in the nutties, we opened our own store selling clothes from Turkey. Kate studied diligently. On weekends, she always came home. Everything was fine until she and her friend got to that unfortunate birthday party. I'll tell you more about that, Madeline said. The beginning of the story didn't sound criminal at all. Doran Smith, one of the town's bigwigs, was having a birthday party. He and his parents live in the Paradise Corner cottage community. My Kate and her friend were also invited. After that party, it was like my daughter was switched. She started dating this Doran. He turned her head. The thing is, everyone in town knows the kid's a real womanizer. He'll play around, and then he'll dump her. Kate was relentless. She loves him, that's all. I don't care if you're smashed to bits. She started disappearing to the Smith's house a lot. She was terrible with me. She came from him and quarreled with me. One day, Doreen offered Katya a place at his house, and she stupidly agreed. I never saw her alive again. Jody sobbed, her shoulders shaking. How did it happen? Did the Smiths give you any details? What was the outcome of the autopsy? Madeline asked. The story was taking a very mysterious turn. The official cause of death was a stroke. But what kind of stroke could a young, healthy girl have? My Kate was an athlete with a perfectly healthy heart. I'm sure Doreen had something to do with my little girl's death, and I want justice, Jody finished loudly. She took out her handkerchief again, wet with tears, and wiped her nose with it. Then she sipped some water from the glass and continued. The police, the Smiths, must have been bribed because they didn't consider anything other than a stroke. The case was closed. But I don't believe the official version. Help me, please, and I'll thank you well, Jody said. Walker was silent for a moment. Yes, it's an interesting case, but it was worth taking on to unravel another tangle. What if the girl did die of some other... All right, I'll take the case. I'll need all the information you have on file after the police investigation, all the references, Kate's friends and girlfriends, and half the money for my work. Madeline wrote the cost of her service on a piece of paper, and Jody nodded affirmatively. I'll see you at the agency day after tomorrow. With all the paperwork, she replied. When Jody left, Madeline quickly opened her laptop and began to look for information about the Smiths. A wealthy family, Doreen's mother and father are the founders of the bank. The son is a major who spends money left and right. And here's the mother's social media page. Margaret Smith. In the photo posed statuesque and very beautiful woman with an imperious look. It was Margot's gaze that mesmerized and frightened at the same time. Walker left the agency building well past midnight. All this time she had been making a plan of action and investigation. But all the paths led to one dead end. There are no documents on the official version of the investigation yet. We have to wait. The phone in her pocket vibrated. It was Brandon. Where do you go? The man yelled cheerfully. Please, I just got home from work, Madeline said tiredly. What do you want? Oh, so we'll be investigating a new case soon. Brandon's voice sounded solemn. I've been waiting for you in the driveway for hours, Walker sighed. Several times a month, Brandon liked to go for a nice walk to get away from everything. He and Madeline went to the most expensive clubs and restaurants, and the guy left almost 2 months' salary of a regular accountant in those places. Oh God, today is such a day. He's going to drag me out again, Walker guessed. She had a bad headache and she wanted to sleep. Brandon, you know I feel so bad. It's been such a hard day, Madeline began, but the boy interrupted her. No excuses. You have to come to the club with me. Your favorite band is playing there tonight. The girl grimaced to herself. It was a good thing Brandon hadn't called via video link. He wouldn't have liked the disgruntled look on Walker's face. Okay, she said, but not for long. Dictate the address, and I'll pick you up. He mumbled satisfactorily. Morning knocked lazily on the window. Madeline got up quickly. Her head was buzzing. Last night's rest at the club had taken its toll. Brandon was lying next to her with his hands behind his head, smiling broadly. Hey, how are you? You know how to relax. You'll see later. I took a picture of you on my phone. What you did on the bar last night. Walker moaned loudly. OHHOU, I told you I can't use. It was worth it for a night like this. We didn't have anything. Madeline looked down at the blanket in horror. Thank God my pajamas were still in place. No, of course not. Brandon's eyebrows rose in surprise. Though you're attractive as hell, it would be a sin to use your body in such a deplorable state. I just took you in a cab, put you to bed, and kept watch to make sure you didn't do anything else. You bully. Brandon pecked Madeline on the cheek and went into the kitchen to find something for breakfast. Walker slowly picked up her phone, found the latest videos and photos. Oh, Brandon, that's some ready-made dirt. Here's her chasing a dancer off the pylon and trying to strip dance, and further knocking bottles off the bar with her beautiful stiletto. The last photo caught my eye. It shows Brandon, Madeline, and another guy with a girl. The young man's face looked familiar. Brandon, come here a minute. Walker called out to him. He came into the bedroom carrying a large tray. There was a glass of soda on the tray, and croissants and coffee. Mr. Antipo-Malin to the rescue. Brandon raised one fist up in a funny, heroic Brandon. Tell me, who's in this picture? Madeline put the phone in her boyfriend's hands. Oh, that's my friend Doreen Smith. and his new girlfriend. You danced with him last night too. Honey, don't you remember anything? Madeline shrugged her shoulders. Brandon, showing his perfect white teeth, laughed loudly. Her head began to buzz again. Walker rummaged through her bedside table and found an aspirin. Sipped some soda. Now we'd have to wait for the pain to go away. Then breakfast. The thing is, a woman came to see me yesterday. She's the mother of Dorian's ex-girlfriend. Her daughter died under unclear circumstances. I've decided to take over the case. You haven't heard anything about it by any chance? Wow, Brandon exhaled and rubbed his hands together. No, Madeline, aspirin. I know that his ex-girlfriend's a horse's ass, but that's about it. Kate's mother's supposed to bring in the deceased's paperwork any day now. She and I have agreed on a pretty good sum for my services. I just don't know where to start. There's not a lot of information about the Smith family on social media. As a friend of Dorian's, do you have anything useful? Alas, sweetheart. The Smiths are very careful about what they show in public and what they keep in the back of the closet. Unless you live with their family, you won't be able to solve this dead girl mystery. What am I supposed to do now? Madeline became visibly sad. What would you do without me? Brandon smiled slyly. You are terribly lucky. Recently, Dimka's mother kicked out of the mansion another housekeeper. We can try to find her through a recruitment agency for rich majors, but the mistress must like you. Otherwise, your whole business will be over. Cynthia and her husband like everything neat and tidy. I was lucky enough to be in their house once. Everything was in order, not a speck of dust in. You don't think she'll realize I'm a sitting duck? Of course it's a good idea. The main thing is to get into the house, gain her trust, and then we can investigate. So what do you say? Shall we try? Brandon asked her. He was already devouring the scones from the tray. Madeline hurried to join him. All right, but I've got to talk it over with Jody first, Walker said, and get copies of the documents. Maybe I'll find something interesting in there. My head was almost gone. The croissant smelled so appetizing that the young people ate every last one. Turns out you can be useful. Big boy, Madeline thought and smiled to herself. It didn't take long for Jody to arrive. The next day, she brought copies of all the certificates and documents to the Eagle Eye Agency. Walker, wearing her fancy gold-rimmed glasses, read the contents in detail. It's all very strange. She snapped her fingertips. Judging by the autopsy results, she should have had heart problems long ago. You say she was more than fine. Jody exclaimed. Kate never complained about her health. Did the police really get paid? And how much money did it take to get the honest justice officials to cover up a sensitive case? Thought Walker. Madeline initiated the woman into her future plans. Jody was surprised and dumbfounded by this turn of events, but Walker assured her that everything should go well, Madeline said. And Jody breathed a sigh of relief. If I get into the settlement, you and I probably won't be able to see each other very often. Whether the Smith family's phone calls are monitored is also a mystery. Wait for my call. Don't call me yourself. If anything, I don't know you. You've never met me. Jody nodded affirmatively. The next morning, an excited Brandon was ringing Madeline's doorbell. I've made an appointment with the secretary of the Lily of the Valley. That's where Cynthia recruits most of her staff, he said as Walker poured coffee into cups. She was preoccupied with something, and the boy noticed it. What if something goes wrong? What if they find out I'm not who I say I am? Don't pretend to be. Don't worry, I'll try to visit Dimka more often to make sure you're safe. Remember, the most important thing is that all the household believes that you are a real housekeeper with experience. Pack your bags, no time to waste, or they'll hire someone else to take your place. Brandon helped Madeline to pack everything she needed, quickly packed a suitcase in the trunk of his foreign car, and they rushed down the busy road. The Lily of the Valley Agency was one of the most elite places to hire a maid with a lot of experience and specialized training. Brandon handed Madeline a fake certificate of completion of a housewife's course and references from a previous job. Study this thoroughly so you won't get into any trouble when the landlady asks, he advised. But how did you? Don't ask. Moore smiled Brandon. EI promised the pretty secretary a wonderful evening at the swankiest restaurant in town. So you owe me. The boy winked. Madeline raised her eyebrows in surprise. Sometimes Brandon can be quite the help. She thought, and started reading her resume. O.B. Garrison, born in 1991, graduated from special education in Washington, D.C., was a housekeeper for a family. Everything swam in front of her eyes. She's O.B. Garrison now. That's great. I have to learn to respond to that name so they don't notice the switch. Where is O.B. now? She asked Brandon thoughtfully. She went to her relatives in TV and got pregnant by her master. So the case was hushed up and she was sent away, so as not to spoil the reputation of the rich family. Madeline shuddered. Not a good start, but a detective should be able to do everything, even work under someone else's name. She'd promised Jean she'd find the truth. All right, Obie, are you ready? Did you read the questionnaire? Cynthia's gonna be here any minute. You're gonna have to do something to make her choose you. Madeline asked, Are there any other candidates? Of course. Ain't, answered Brandon. You have 5 more charming young girls. I suggest you change into a more modest outfit and put your hair in a tight bun Cynthia likes order. Madeline quickly changed her clothes and did as the boy advised. Half an hour later, the rich mistress was already at the agency. Cynthia changed housekeepers like gloves, so the other girls said. Madeline's heart dropped. Come on, think of something to make her hire you. She screamed inside. The secretary of the Lily of the Valley agency asked the girls to line up in a straight line. When the woman entered the room, Madeline knew at a glance who she was. Cynthia, tall and slender, had a commanding and magnetic look. Her voice was loud and commanding. She stopped in front of the potential housekeepers and asked the receptionist for all the girls' resumes. Cynthia studied the papers for a long time, then looked up sharply and said, I've chosen. Who is Monica Wiggins? That's it. That's it. What am I supposed to do? Madeline's eyes raced. I've got it, Cynthia. May I speak to you? You're making a big mistake hiring that housekeeper. Walker stepped forward and continued. I used to work in the same big mansion with Sidorova. I'll tell you, she's been stealing groceries and taking them out of the village more than once. The girls gasped and whispered. And Sidorova, white with anger, cried out, She's lying. I didn't steal anything. I have an excellent reputation, but Cynthia paid no attention to Monica. Her scrutinizing gaze rested on Madeline. Are you Harrison? I've never seen you in this agency before. And you look better than the others. Okay, you'll work for me. We'll see what happens. Maybe you're the one stealing, and you're the one who told on your friend. Cynthia smiled broadly, revealing large white teeth. Monica whispered curses, but Walker didn't care. Her plan had come to fruition. Now the main thing was not to give herself away. The hostess talked to the secretary for a few more minutes, then nodded to Madeline and headed for the exit. Walker, showing her tongue to the other girls, quickly picked up her heavy suitcase and followed Cynthia. A luxury car of the latest model was waiting for her at the exit. Madeline was about to open the doors, but Cynthia stopped her with a wave of her hand. You're taking a different car. The servants aren't allowed to ride with the owners. The exception is our. You can't say anything, Madeline thought, and looked around. Obie Harrison, was being called by a handsome man. Madeline drove to the Paradise Corner settlement in a domestically made ramshackle car. My name is Reese. The man introduced himself, looking at Madeline in the rearview mirror. It's nice to see new faces in our home. I hope you're familiar with our hostess's personality. UAC sharp. OBI, replied the girl. UA, judging by her appearance, she is You're right. Reese winked. I'd advise you not to fall for her son. If you go missing, your family won't find you. Reese was suddenly silent, and they rode in silence the rest of the way. Paradise Corner was closely guarded. You couldn't just walk through. A wide and long fence led along the entire territory of the cottage village. At the entrance were 2 guards in full armor. Madeline memorized everything carefully. Wow, you've got a lot of security here, she said to Reese. He nodded affirmatively. The villagers don't like uninvited guests. Every visitor is registered in a book. The guards have the book, so don't try to escape. They won't let you out that easily. Reese smiled, and Madeline didn't know if he was joking or telling the truth. But the whole thing is creepy. The house stopped in the backyard of a posh mansion. The house looked like an old castle. Tall towers, peculiar masonry walls. Madeline froze for a moment at the entrance. The house amazed her. She had only seen such buildings in pictures of children's fairy tales. Reese gently pushed Madeline toward the entrance and wished her good luck. Walker hesitantly entered the building. How chic and expensive everything was. What a huge kitchen. Marble floors, mirrored ceilings. Suddenly, a strong hand grabbed her shoulder. Cynthia, the woman, led Madeline into the parlor, where the rest of the servants were already lined up. Walker scrutinized the even formation of 2 guards, 3 drivers, a fat cook, a laundress, and a housekeeper. A woman wore the same uniform, a white bonnet, a dark brown dress with a sheer lace apron. On their feet were black patent shoes without heels. The guards and drivers wore blue overalls and the same patent shoes. All looked sternly downward, hesitating to raise their eyes to the hostess and the new girl. And Cynthia, smiling contentedly, introduced Madeline. Honored ones, there's a new member of your friendly staff today. Please love and welcome Obi Garrison. She'll be replacing our previous housekeeper. Yeah, sure. And Dimitri's gonna have some fun too. Fresh meat, the sullen cook muttered. Everyone nodded their heads. So, you know very well that such talk will get you fired without reinstatement. Cynthia's voice suddenly changed from honey-colored to dry and commanding. Peggy, will you come to my office after lunch? Cynthia said, glaring at the cook. Peggy seemed to realize what the management was going to talk to her about, so she quickly squared her head and looked down at the floor. Madeline looked around curiously at the staff. The guards were all well-built, pumped up, slim and stern. The cook and laundress were like twins, equally plump, with kind eyes. The housekeeper is like an old mantis, a dried-up and decrepit woman on the threshold of old age. But the housekeeper's unkind look did not please the girl. Please show Obi to her room. Cynthia said to the housekeeper. Give her the linens and tell her her duties. Obi, when you've laid out your things and changed into your uniform, come and see me to discuss your salary. But my salary was already set at the agency where you hired me, Walker wondered. There's something, of course, Cynthia said wryly. But we haven't talked about additional services. Don't waste time. Go to your room and get changed. Muse, take her upstairs. Cynthia waved to the rest of the staff, a gesture that obviously meant the introductions were over. Seems like getting acquainted and figuring things out here is going to be very difficult. Well, nothing. We'll see, thought Madeline as she climbed the steep spiral staircase upstairs. The muse showed the girl to her small room. It was more like a closet because it was in the attic part of the house. There was an old iron bed, a chest of drawers, and a desk with a chair by the window. Nothing else. You can stay here, Obi. Martha said politely, pointing to the bed. And the laundress will bring your laundry. Keep it clean and change it as needed. You will ask our hostess any questions you may have when you're clean. We say, Muse, I don't know your middle name. Muse Scott. We'll say, Muse Scott. Is it customary here to address a stranger as you? The old housekeeper pressed her lips together. You know, Obi, only the strongest of spirits endure here. Cynthia is a very wise woman, and she keeps only a select few around her. I've served her faithfully for over 15 years, and in all that time, she has never questioned my courtesy or the proper treatment of her servants. Not once has she ever punished me. So, girl, it's not for you to tell me how to treat anyone. Muse Scott turned abruptly and disappeared out the door. Madeline stood with the suitcase by the dresser. Oh, wow, she said to herself. What a place to live. When she had laid out her things and made her bed, she put on the uniform that the courteous washerwoman had brought her. Without a word, the woman placed the clothes on the bed, nodded, and disappeared like a shadow. The servants here walked silently. That meant that anything could definitely happen in this mansion. Insidious scheming, deceit, treason, and murder. Maybe more than one. Like, where did the old housekeeper go? So, Obi, how do you like our house? Thanks, but I've only been in my room so far. But I'm sure it's gorgeous and very old. Yes, it's beautiful. It used to belong to my great-grandmother. During World War II, the Nazis took it over, but after the German army was defeated, the house survived. I didn't invite you into my office to discuss your job duties. You already know them. Madeline knew them. To keep the house clean, to clean the household, to set the table before meals, to serve the mistress and her family. By the way, where's Cynthia and Dorian's husband? You probably know that we are the owners of a huge inheritance. We keep our valuables safe and don't show our lives to the common people. B.A. Jetty. Cynthia began. Her voice sounded assertive. "That's why you should know that any gossip about our family is a direct way to be reprimanded and fired. All phone calls are tapped, keep that in mind. In general, anything you see or hear here must stay within the walls of the house. Now about the business. I wanted to offer you an extra income. You will have to inform about the condition of all my subordinates. Are you suggesting that I snitch on my co-workers?" The girl asked bluntly. "Why are you being so harsh?" The hostess smiled wryly. Not to snitch, but to share the mood of the staff with me. I should know what's being said behind my back. Of course. You just want me to be a snitch." "You sly toad," Walker thought, and answered, "Am I allowed to think?" "Of course," Cynthia said. "I didn't expect such a quick answer." Think it over, and then you and I will make a deal," Smith smiled. But Madeline saw something devilish and unkind in that smile. "Now you may begin your duties. Go to Muse Scott and get what you need for your work." When Madeline left, Cynthia exhaled deeply and said to herself, "Either she's stupid or she's too smart. It's okay, Obi, I'll find out who you really are." Brandon called her at midnight. He promised he'd come to visit Dimitri soon. Dorian Smith arrived home late. He was drunk. Dorian's father showed up after midnight. Madeline heard Cynthia screaming and cursing. The tired girl fell asleep in the morning. "Meh. Peggy, what's the matter?" Peggy yelled. You've overdried the meat again. Maybe it's time to replace you. Get out of my sight, you brainless bitch." Peggy picked up the pieces of roast that were lying on the floor, picked up a tray, and whirled out of the dining room. Doreen chuckled at the sight of such a scene. He obviously found this morning's squabble funny. He looked at Madeline and his eyes lit up. Vincent, Cynthia's husband, sniffled unhappily as he looked at his wife. "Oh, honey, can't you get off your butt sometimes and cook something yourself?" He asked his wife calmly. "No, Daddy, she can't. Mom's too busy lying on the couch." Cynthia pounded her fist on the table. "Hey, son, you know that. I'm sick right now." "Mom, you're always sick." "Well, I'm going to go. Wait for us to visit tonight." The hostess changed her face. "You asked who? Who else are you going to bring?" Doreen was very much like his mother. That's why he liked to annoy her. His new girlfriend. "You don't dare bring your new prostitute here." Her mother shrieked and her hands shook. Vincent tried to calm her down, but it was in vain. "I dare you. You've got the old one down, but you wouldn't dare treat the new one like that." "Believe me." Doreen finished his coffee and left the dining room. Madeline looked up at him curiously as she cleaned up the grease from the roast. What was he talking about? Who was swatting who? Doreen winked at her and slammed the front door. There was the sound of a car engine slowly moving away. Darling, Cynthia sobbed. I can't go on like this. Sweetheart, let's go to the bedroom. I'll give you something to calm you down." Vincent took his wife under his arm and they went into one of the back rooms. When Cynthia's husband came out, Madeline was cleaning the hallway. "You didn't hear anything this morning. Do you understand me?" He hissed, looking Madeline in the eye. She invited not to argue. "Oh, of course, Vincent. I didn't hear anything. Everything was fine. You had breakfast and went about your business?" "Oh, good girl," growled the satisfied host. He got dressed and left for work. Walker had been working at the Smith house for 2 months. In that time, she had gotten to know the rest of the servants. Muse Scott, a stern-looking housekeeper, turned out to be a very simple-minded woman. She liked the outdoors, and Madeline often asked to go for walks in the park with her. "You know, I don't have a mother. You look just like her," Madeline sobbed, and Muse Scott's heart melted. She became more attached to the housekeeper, and Madeline could thus learn all the information about the Smith family members. Peggy, a longtime cook, had disliked Madeline from the first day. Walker recognized the woman's weak spot. Peggy liked expensive alcohol. Therefore, the girl, in one of the cloudy evenings, visited the room where the cook lived and treated her with expensive cognac. The brandy was brought by Madeline Brandon. The plump cook told Walker that strange things were happening in the mansion. All of Doreen's girls are dying in a strange way, of heart attacks, but Peggy didn't believe it. She thought that the girls are killed by the son of the mistress himself, and the mother and father cover up the atrocities of their child. Madeline decided to herself that Peggy was the main ear of the house, so the cook must always be kept on the hook. The fat and pitiful laundress, Maiji, worked in the basement and rarely came out. Madeline had a bad rapport with her, but she knew from Peggy Walker that Mary had a daughter and had worked in the house before. Then she had died under strange circumstances. Meiji was quiet and didn't share her life story with the guards. Had little interest in Madeline, but Walker knew they were probably the main witnesses who might know the truth about what was happening to the girls in the mansion. There would have to be a clever way to collect the camera footage. One of the men, Daniel, was younger than the others. He could be approached. How Walker hadn't figured out yet. The drivers, Ireland and Wendy Whitewater, were twins and Madeline often confused. Brendan began coming to the Smith house more often, and he and Doran would play pool or watch movie premieres. He and Madeline learned to communicate on the phone with the help of a special cipher. Some words were replaced by others, but the meaning of the information could be grasped. Brendan, in turn, was interested in the affairs and life of Doreen. Madeline never agreed to Cynthia's additional income. The landlady did not appreciate such a decision. From the servants, Walker learned that the mistress gave such an offer to each of the workers of the house, but no one dared to take such a step. Whistleblowers are not liked. Snitches are quietly put away. Every day of her life in the Smith house, the detective recorded on a small dictaphone. It was necessary to filter information and memorize every little thing. Also, the cunning housekeeper was able to install several tiny recording cameras when she cleaned the rooms of the owners and door. The main thing was to make sure that no one noticed the peepholes. The first plans had come to fruition. Now it was necessary to gain the trust of the young guard. Madeline's thoughts were interrupted by loud laughter. Doreen walked into the hallway, holding the hand of a young girl. She was dressed in an expensive mink coat and leather boots. Madeline had a good eye for quality things. "Oh, hello, Bunny." Doreen waved cheerfully. Get the table ready. I'm going to introduce Mom and Dad to my future wife." Madeline smelled the odor of alcohol coming from the boy. "You've got to keep your eyes open now." Cynthia slowly entered the hallway. Her head was covered with a tight towel, for she had been unwell all day. Vincent had returned from work early today and was sitting in his study. But the shouting and noise in the hallway forced his master to come downstairs. "Dory, what are you doing here?" he asked, sighing noisily. "Mother's been in bed with headaches since this morning. Take the young lady home and we'll get acquainted tomorrow." I wouldn't think of it." Doran shouted cheerfully. If you don't want to get acquainted today, the young lady will sleep at our house and we'll get acquainted at breakfast." She smiled politely at Cynthia and Vincent Taylor. The host looked at Madeline with a murderous look, and she realized what she had to do. "OBA, tell Peggy not to put alcohol on the table." Cynthia whispered to Madeline, "Tell Peggy to put more alcohol on the table. We're having a party tonight. Right, honey?" The girl smiled fearfully and nodded. Cynthia motioned to go into the dining room. The woman was pale and often clung to her temples. Vincent sat down at the head of the table with a stone face. The newcomer was not welcome in this house. Madeline was carrying the dishes and overhearing the Smiths' conversation. Honey, don't worry. We'll get her out of here in no time." Vincent whispered to "It's not the way I'd like it to be today. I don't think I'll survive 1 minute with that prostitute." Cynthia hissed. Where did he pick her up? Or Doreen, red with either joy or drink, tended to his girlfriend in the hallway. Madeline helped him hang up his clothes. Doreen's new fling was very pretty and sophisticated. I wouldn't have thought she looked like a girl of easy virtue. Probably a person of high society. Doreen's girlfriend, maybe. Madeline took out her tape recorder and quietly placed it on the mantel, covering it with a framed photograph. "Okay, great. Now we don't have to worry about any information floating past our ears." Meanwhile, dinner was served and everyone gathered around the table. Madeline stood a little farther back behind her host's backs to carry the dirty plates into the kitchen. "Mommy." Doreen began. "My dear, let me introduce you to my new wife-to-be. Her name is Lexi. She's very rich, so can you please leave your barbs behind and accept my choice for once in your life?" Lexi's was obviously feeling a little out of place. She blushed thickly and looked at Dorian expressively. But he continued as if nothing had happened. "Oh, Mother, she's going to live with us. Since I am the heir to this house, I have the right to decide who lives here. Daddy, you won't let Mom hurt my fiancé, will you? Like she did to Kate?" "Shut up," Vincent yelled. His face darkened and he slammed the plate down hard. It shattered and fell to the floor. Madeline hurried to pick up the pieces. Whoa, things are starting to take a turn for the worse. Jody, Kate's mother, thinks her daughter was killed by Doreen, but maybe there's more to it than meets the eye. Dad, don't scare Lexi. Doreen began in a hurt tone, but son, you're scaring your fiancé. Why would she tell you about your ex-girlfriend who didn't lead a very decent life, cheating on you with a security guard? Lexi comes from a very intelligent and respectable family. Honey, have dinner with us. Cynthia, with an anaconda's gaze, began to put meat and potatoes on her guest's plate. Lexi, thank you, Cynthia, but I don't eat that much. I'm watching my figure. Doreen doesn't like fat people. Cynthia smiled wryly and whispered to Madeline, go to Peggy's kitchen and help her decorate the dessert. It's clear. The hostess doesn't want any extra ears in the dining room. Madeline smiled and went out. The dictaphone will record everything. It was hot in the kitchen. Peggy was sitting at the table drinking tea. Did you bring another victim? The woman grinned. Do you want tea? Cynthia sent me to help decorate the dessert, Madeline said. Peggy raised an eyebrow in surprise. Oh, it's been done for a long time. Come sit down and we'll talk. Madeline sat down at the table. Peggy began. She came to change the linen in your room and found something. The woman held out her palm to Madeline. There was a bug on the palm, apparently lost when Walker pulled out the baggie with the tiny cameras. How could she be so sloppy? But I had to find a way out of it. I don't know. Probably a camera, Madeline shrugged. But Peggy continued her questioning. Oh, I can see it's a spy camera. How did it get in your room? Oh, I guess the owners wanted to test my honesty, so they put it there. Walker tried to evade. Do you think I'm a fool, girl? The cook smiled. I can see from your face that you're not a housekeeper for hire. You don't know how to clean professionally. You don't know how to serve the owners. Who are you and where did you come from? Tell me, or I'll have to tell my guesses to the owners. Peggy poured herself more tea and looked questioningly at Walker. What's to be done? How could I have blundered like this? Because of my busy work schedule, I forgot to change the laundry myself. What else could the laundress have seen in there? Madeline pondered chaotically, but there was nowhere to go. Peggy could really tell the owners, and then the whole plan would fail. We have to tell the truth. Yes, you're right. Walker said after a moment. I'm not who I say I am, but I didn't get here by accident. I'm investigating the mysterious death of Kate, Doreen's ex-girlfriend. She recently passed away right here in the house. The girl's mother doesn't believe Kate could have died of a stroke. Her daughter was perfectly healthy. And my name isn't Obi. It's Madeline. Madeline walked. Wow, Peggy whistled. Why didn't you tell me about yourself before? Madeline looked at the woman in surprise. Logic was definitely not Peggy's strong suit. I didn't know anything about you. You could have turned me in, and then I would never have known the truth about the murder. The cook looked at Madeline very carefully, questioning whether or not to believe the story. Suddenly, she said excitedly, Walker, I know you. I've heard about your agency many times. Brendan, Doreen. Madeline nodded in agreement. Yes. Brandon and I have decided that I need to infiltrate the Smith mansion itself and find out all the facts. I need all the security tapes. Maybe they have Kate's murder on them, but there's no way I can gain the trust of any of them. I've known Cynthia and her husband for years. They could be hiding their son's evil deeds. Doreen's strange too, changing girls like a glove. How many girls has the Smith son had, and all of them disappearing in the middle of nowhere? Fuck off. Peggy exclaimed delightedly, but Madeline shushed her. The Smiths might have heard. Peggy, you must promise me you won't tell anyone. Not about me and my business. Not even the washerwoman. No one but us can know who I really am. Swear it. Come on, darling. I'll never give you up. I promise to help you with your case. I too feel sorry for all the girls of that young tyrant. There were so many of them, all from rich families. Where they disappeared to, I don't know. But Cynthia never accepted any potential bride into her family. Just the air in the dining room was tense. Lightning seemed to fly from Cynthia's eyes. Vincent stared blankly at the ceiling. The girl served dessert. She managed to sneak over to the fireplace and took out a tape recorder. She wondered what they were talking about. When dinner was over, Madeline quickly cleaned up the dining room and hurried to her room. In her hand, she clutched the dictaphone. But when the girl entered the bedroom, she shrieked in surprise. On the bed sat Doreen. "Hello, little birdie," he said and smiled. Madeline froze at the door. What was he doing here? After all, the girl had seen with her own eyes how he, along with Lexi, had gone to his apartment. What does he want? Don't shake. I came to you with an offer. You see, my mother is in a bad mood about my new girlfriend again. I'll make you a deal. You tell me everything you hear about me and Lexi from my parents, and I'll pay you good money. Deal. Madeline sighed. Mother and son are the same, and if Cynthia finds out, she won't. Dory moved closer to Madeline and patted the girl on the cheek. If you don't tell, I hope you're smart. I am a grave. It's not in my interest to spoil myself in the mansion. All right, I'll give it a try. Yue Walker sighed. How just in time is all this? Doreen winked happily and quickly left the bedroom. The girl closed the door tightly, lay down with her head under the blanket, and turned on the recorder. Doreen, how nice of you to bring such a young lady into the house again. Lexi, do you like it here? Your pants aren't too tight after dinner. Cynthia's voice sounded. I'm fine, thank you. Lexi answered confidently and without a tremor in her voice. I really like your cozy home. I live downtown and this cottage community is my first time in this area. Your house really stands out from the others. I hope when you come to my parents' house to meet them, you'll appreciate our mansion too. Oh, honey, I hope that won't happen. It was the landlady again. Her voice was lusciously, Mommy, take it easy. If you want to see your little boy home once in a while, don't make me have to pack my bags and leave home again. The recorder was silent for a minute. Then there was a sob. Doreen, don't say that. Let Lexi stay with us as long as she wants. You just, okay, Mommy, calm down. I'm not going anywhere. Dad, we'll probably go to our place. Cynthia shakes. Stop it, sweetheart. I hate her already. If you only knew. I hate all of them. They want to take everything from Doreen. And our money. My dear, come on. I'll give you a pill. Footsteps sounded, and the recorder turned off. So much for the recording, Madeline thought for a moment. Strange. Cynthia has strong nerves, but something had clearly happened at dinner that had thrown the mistress of the mansion off balance. We must get to the bottom of this. Only very carefully. There was a persistent knock at the door. Madeline wasn't expecting anyone. Who? Open up, Madeline. It's Peggy. Walker let the woman into the room and locked the door. Peggy, please don't shout my name all over the floor. They could hear you. The girl shouted angrily. I'm sorry. I'm stupid. The woman whimpered. I have a plan to get the security tapes. The whole house. HSDNT. Ow, come on, tell me. Peggy took Madeline's hands. It's simple. Daniel, one of the guards, is head over heels in love with you. He confessed it to me the other day when he was having lunch in the kitchen. He's been asking me all sorts of questions about how to approach you. This is our chance. Just reciprocate. Madeline sighed and sat down on the bed. Playing with love is no joke. It could end very sadly, but it was worth a try. It was a magical winter morning. The first thin snow fell and covered the frozen ground with its lace. The spirit of the upcoming new year was in the sky. City Paradise Corner was slowly being dressed up. In some houses, the workers were already working at full speed. They put on the roofs and walls of houses LED ribbons, installed figures of snowmen, Santa Claus. The Smith mansion already stood dressed up. The towers were decorated with lights on the windows, elegant lace patterns made of special paper. Madeline took an active part in all this pre-holiday bustle and even for a moment forgot that she was a detective under a false name. During this time, the Smith house had become her home. Madeline had been nursing the idea of a relationship for a long time, until one day Daniel himself talked to the girl when they went to town to buy groceries. The housekeeper was contractually obligated to go shopping with an escort. The guard had apparently asked for it. Nice weather, isn't it? He asked, looking in the rearview mirror. Madeline looked straight into the guy's eyes. They were like two hypnotic circles, drawing him inward. Oh, great. I love winter. The girl answered honestly. The driver, Edgar Stanley, smiled slyly. He switched the wave on the radio. You're not like the other housekeepers were. Daniel was still looking thoughtfully in the mirror. There's something special about you. Yeah, of course there is. I'm just not who I think I am, that's all. Big deal. Madeline's heart was aflame. She answered aloud. I don't know any former housekeepers. But I can tell you that I'm not very good at cleaning. Denial smiled. They drove the rest of the way to the center in complete silence. Only the music from the stereo disturbed the peace. Edgar Stanley lit a cigarette and opened the window a little. A stream of cool but refreshing air rushed. Madeline sighed with pleasure. Daniel glanced at the girl the whole way. At the center, all the Paradise Corner housekeepers bought their groceries from only one single high-end store, Adam and Eve. The first time Madeline saw the sign, she laughed heartily. How had she never noticed this storefront before? After all, she'd been to the market 1,000 times. And to miss such a name, I wonder who had gotten the idea. Poor Adam and Eve would have rolled over in their graves for the 1,000th time. But today Madeline didn't even look at the sign. She stared into the crowd. Oh no! Jody was staring at her. Now she was going to give Walker away. Jody waved her arms at Madeline. Who's that? Someone you know. Danielle asked sympathetically. Madeline begged Jody with one eye. Please don't say my name. Just walk past me, please. The woman caught Walker's pleading gaze, nodded affably to the guard, and disappeared into the crowd. Madeline exhaled loudly. Whew, she almost got hooked like a huge fish. Gotta be more careful. Daniel said to hurry up, and they entered the Adam and Eve store. Wandering by the grocery shelves, Madeline kept feeling Daniel's breath on her neck. It was time for this to stop. The girl turned around abruptly. She met the boy's eyes and read the devotion and love in them. Shall we go for a walk in the park tonight? When we finish our work. The boy murmured. I don't mind. Madeline replied politely. She didn't want to cheat the guard's feelings, but sacrifices had to be made for the cause. If she pretended to be in love, she would have access to all the information she needed. First finds a Daniel smiled and took Madeline's hand. That's so cute, just like high school. Walker's first love had been just as naive. Her classmate had been hesitant to approach Madeline, but she was the first to tell him how she felt. And as in all the famous fairy tales, all should have lived happily ever after, but not so. Turns out a classmate had bet his friend to win Madeline over. Oh, she cried so hard. Apparently, the first unhappy love left its bitter traces in Walker's soul. She could not meet anyone for more than 6 months. Now it's a relationship game. In the evening, Daniel was waiting for the girl at the entrance. He was holding a modest bouquet of roses. The flowers gave off a great fragrance. Strangely, the roses were not like the ones sold in flower stores. They didn't smell so strong. Cynthia grows these flowers herself. She was kind enough to cut a few sprigs for me. Here you go, Danielle said happily. Thank you, replied Madeline, who was blushing. They walked slowly down the path to the park. Danielle, I'm sorry to be blunt, but I don't quite understand what's going on at the mansion. Cynthia and Vincent seemed like a very intelligent couple at first, until I met their son, Doreen. It's like he's deliberately pissing off his parent. Why would he do that? Doreen has nothing to spare. Fly to the islands, buy all the fancy cars in town. He's got the girls all ready to fall at his feet. You were looking at him too, Danielle said. It's my job to keep an eye on everyone. Well, you've been watching him, and he sees that and he's flirting. Aren't you afraid of being in the shoes of all the other girls? The guard's words startled Walker. What does he mean? No, you're imagining things. I look at everyone like that, Madeline mumbled, trying to change this. The rest of the walk they talked about unimportant things. Their plans for New Year's Eve, their hobbies. Madeline found it hard to make up Obi's story. I wonder how the young man would behave if he found out that it was not Obi's housekeeper, but young Detective Madeline Walker. Probably ratted out the landlady. Daniel led Madeline to the front of the mansion and said goodbye. Would you like me to show you where I live and work next time? He asked. Bingo. I didn't even have to make up an excuse to get into his den and see where the hard disks were and stealthily take them, and then find a place where you can rewrite the information to disk. That would be great, the girl replied. She let Daniel kiss her cheek. Madeline went into her bedroom and laid her head on her pillow tiredly. Then she dialed Brandon's number. Hello, Madeline. Is that you? A voice mumbled sleepily. You see what time it is? Brandon, the bird is almost in the cage. U.S. said the girl. We need a few more days and we will catch it. The voice on the other end of the line said, Good for you, she said. Call me if you need anything. Madeline hung up the phone and was about to doze off, but her peace was interrupted by shrieks downstairs. You bastard, how dare you? Cynthia screamed in a fit. She was in her pink nightdress, her bonnet pulled down over her hair. The landlady's face was blue from screaming. Vincent held Cynthia, preventing her from attacking Lexi. Miji stood nearby. I won't let you hurt the girl. The laundress said in a trembling voice and covered the girl with her body. Vitally, let me go. I'll show her now. Where did you take my son, you bitch? Why? Lexi sobbed and hid behind the laundress' broad back. Madeline could see Peggy's worried face through the narrow slit of the door. Okay? The landlady yelled next. Get the hell out of my house. Stop wasting my money. Don't ever set foot here again. I'll give you 1 minute. She's not going anywhere. Said Michi sharply. Your son has knocked up the poor girl. She's pregnant. It's your son who should be kicked out. He should not spoil any more young girls. How much longer are you going to abuse? You know I won't have to tell the police what you did to your son's previous girlfriend. Get out. Cynthia shouted. The door of the mansion opened abruptly. Doreen flew in. Surprisingly, he was sober. Madeline felt as if she had to stop him. She put her arm around Cynthia. Doreen, calm down. But the guy didn't hear her. He shoved Madeline roughly away, causing her to fall to the floor and hurt. All she remembered was Peggy's tear-stained face and Daniel's eyes, then darkness. Madeline woke up in her room with her head tightly bandaged. Muse Scott was sitting beside her. Lie down, my good girl. She said, adjusting the blanket. You need to rest. You hit your head hard on the sharp corner of the stairs, but you're all right now. They called a doctor and he stitched up your head. Just lie down and rest. If you need anything, call me on the phone. I'll be right over. What about the others? Madeline interrupted her. She felt the bump on her head and wrinkled her nose. Where are Doreen and Lexi? Cynthia? Miji? Cynthia's in her room with her husband. Thank goodness that you fell and passed out. It stopped the family fight. I don't know what would have happened if that hadn't happened. Doreen and Lexi are in their wing. Of course, I'm in shock that she's in the position. What's going to happen now? And Miji? What about her? Muse Scott lowered her gaze. The laundress, unfortunately, was kicked out immediately. They wouldn't even let her pack her bags. Now you're the one who has to stand up for yourself. You should have used your head. Oh, that's terrible. She was protecting Lexi. Cynthia could have hit that girl. Honey, the old housekeeper interrupted her, but it's happened here sometimes. This is not an isolated incident. You'd better not get involved in this case. Muse Scott, please tell me what happened to Kate, Doreen's ex-girlfriend. Madeline held the housekeeper's hand to keep her from leaving. She's dead, Muse Scott said through gritted teeth. I don't believe it. You're lying to me. Tell me the truth. Walker screamed. She squeezed the housekeeper's fingers tightly. Bobby, calm down. The woman pulled her hand out of Walker's iron fetters and rubbed it. Cynthia said, you're on sick leave for a week. Peggy can take care of 2. I'll do the laundry. When you go back to work, you'll have to do the laundry. I've got enough to do around the house. Muse Scott's gone. Oh no, a week just wasted. And not to know what would happen next after the family quarrel. Madeline tried to get out of bed, but immediately fell backwards. A sharp headache pierced her skull. The girl fell into a short, dreamless sleep. The next morning, Peggy came in to see Walker. Looking at the cook's puffy face, Madeline realized that Peggy was grieving for her colleague. I see you're all right. How's your head? Does it hurt? The woman hugged Madeline. Don't worry, I'm on the mend, and I'll be back to work soon. Walker smiled happily. It's been like that. Peggy said. The landlady almost killed the poor girl. You should have seen the look on Doreen's face. He must have fallen head over heels in love with Lexi. Anyway, they're getting married and Cynthia's not happy about it. She's locked herself in her room, and sometimes I bring her food, but she won't touch it. What's going to happen next? I don't want it to be like Kate, Madeline said and closed her eyes. Iggy, I need to get better. Daniel's been asking for you. Can he come over for a few minutes? He's worried, poor guy. Madeline nodded affirmatively. We have to keep investigating, no matter what. and get out of this house while the bones are still intact. A week later, Madeline went back to her job. Now she had to do laundry for extra pay. But the girl was not afraid of hardship. While you work, you have more time to think. The guard promised to show her his workplace. Well, she would get there today. Madeline found Daniel in the backyard of the repair shop. He was lying under a car in a t-shirt, fixing something. "What are you doing here?" she exclaimed in surprise. Daniel climbed out from under the car and kissed Madeline on the cheek. "Well, now I'm not only a guard, but also a driver." Miji left and led Edgar away with her. They had been in love for a long time. "I'm sorry," Madeline replied inside. "And now I'm not only a housekeeper, but also a laundress. Listen, do you know? I think Monica had a daughter who worked here. What happened to her?" "The laundress told me her daughter disappeared. Her daughter's name was Obi. She did work here, but I never saw her. Edgar Stanley told me everything. Miji had arranged for Obi to be her assistant. 20-year-old girl changed the linens and brought them to the laundress. The landlady's son had taken a liking to her. I think they even met in the backyard. But then Obi disappeared." Miji was very sad. She searched for her daughter for a long time, but there were no leads. They say the washerwoman even wandered into the woods near our village. "What is unusual about this forest?" Walker asked curiously. Daniel wrinkled his nose as if he was remembering. "They say the forest is enchanted, that if you go in there, you'll disappear without a trace. Sometimes they hear screaming and crying, the souls of lost people trying to find their way to paradise." Marnie laughed. "Danielle, you're wonderful. I've never laughed so hard in my life. I'm sorry, but that's crazy. You still believe in spirits and enchanted forests. There's just animals out there, maybe even wolves. That's why they howl. Think what you want." Danielle looked at the girl piercingly. But I believe in otherworldly forces, and in God and spirits." "Okay, I won't argue with you." "Stubborn sheep," Madeline thought to herself. "You promised me you'd show me the place where you work." Walker smiled. Daniel agreed. He took a shower, changed into his usual security guard uniform, and led the girl to a one-story gray building that was a little to the left of the Smith mansion. There were many rooms in the building. Some of them were living rooms with bunks and desks. Others were. Madeline caught one eye in the room where the monitor stood. "Oh, how interesting. Let's go in here." She clapped her hands childishly. The young man frowned. But what could he do if a pretty girl agreed to his proposal? "Daniel, come on in." Madeline was the first to enter the den. It turned out that the surveillance cameras were not only outside, but also in the living room and hallways of the house. Walker's eyes searched for the recording device. The hard disk was at the very bottom, sticking out of the system unit. "Well, what do you think?" "Interesting," Daniel asked quickly. He clearly didn't like the presence of a stranger in the den. "Did you see it?" "Yes, it's cool." Madeline made a surprised face. I'm shocked." The guard smiled and offered to go to his living room for coffee or tea. Walker agreed. Thoughts were flying around chaotically in her head. What to do to get the hard drive out? We should just stay the night at his place. Daniel led Madeline to a very cozy room. There was a beautiful carved bed in the corner, a desk with a laptop near the window. The floor was decorated with a fluffy white rug. Daniel clearly liked comfort. The tea brewed by the guy was surprisingly tasty and fragrant. The guy already wanted to walk the girl out, but Madeline knew the right thing to do. She stopped Daniel with a single glance and approached him closely. The boy's pupils dilated as he touched his lips to the lips of his favorite girl. This was something to dream about. It was going to be a hot night. Walker cautiously opened her eyes. Daniel was sound asleep. "Of course, you should try to stay awake after a marathon like that," she smiled. She stood up, threw the guy's shirt over her naked body, pulled a flash drive out of her pants pocket, and tiptoed out into the hallway. The TV was blaring loudly in one of the living rooms. One has to remember that besides Daniel, there are 2 other employees on the property. She wished she didn't have to confront them. How would she explain to them why she was walking around the security housing unit in the nude? The monitor room was open. Bingo, the room's empty, so the rest of the guards are either sleeping or wandering the grounds. There were 2 guards slowly strolling by the fence, so Daniel was supposed to be sitting at the monitor today. The girl didn't want the guy to get fired because of her. She'd have to act fast. Walker was good friends with the computer, so she found the database in 1 minute and put it on download. Gotta wait 5 minutes. Too long. I hope no one catches me. There was 1 more minute to go. Walker stared at the monitor. There, Vincent walked slowly down the hallway to the bedroom. Dorian and Lexi were nowhere to be seen. But what was Cynthia doing in the dining room? The hostess on camera was sitting at a table surrounded by a pile of bottles and vials. She was stirring some kind of solution in a bowl. That's weird. Maybe she's making a night mask. What are you doing here? Daniel's voice sounded loud behind me. Oh no. He noticed it was missing and went to look for it. What was there to tell him if it was already obvious? Madeline slowly took out the flash drive and hid it behind her back. What's going on here? What did you download? Give me the flash drive. The guy yelled. If you come near me, I'll scream. How will you explain what I was doing here? I'm not allowed in here, Walker said calmly. Did you take advantage of me? Danielle asked. There was bitterness in his voice. How could you? I was nice to you. We had great sex. I thought we were going to see each other again. Why do you need the information from the cameras? Madeline didn't answer. To tell the truth about herself or not, the girl was starting to like Danielle. It's a shame it had to happen like this, because I'm not Obi. I'm Madeline Walker. I'm a detective. I'm trying to investigate the disappearance of someone named Catherine, Dorian's ex-girlfriend. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to upset you, but I won't tell anyone I was at your place and saw the surveillance system. If you don't tell anyone I'm not who I say I am, let's go to my place. Nate. Danielle took her elbow firmly. I like you so damn much. I don't even want to be mad at you. I'll tell you the whole What? The girl's eyebrows slowly crept upward. Why all the running around, the deception, when you could just ask the guy, frankly confess everything? Madeline walked into the room and sat down on the crumpled bed. Daniel stood in front of her and folded his arms in front of his chest. He was gorgeous in the moonlight, but very stern. Where did you come from? Aren't you afraid of death at all? The guard asked in surprise. I work at the Eagle Eye Detective Agency. She began. Kate's mother, Jody, came to see me 3 months ago. She was in deep mourning. Kate was Dorian's girlfriend and they had been dating for a long time. The daughter had even quarreled with her mother and moved out. Kate started living with Dorian at Smith's house. At first, everything was fine, but then Kate's sudden death from a stroke. Moreover, the girl was absolutely healthy according to her mother. There was very little information about the family on the internet, so there was nothing left but to infiltrate the house under a false name. My partner and co-owner of the agency, Brandon, helped me with the placement in this hole. Danielle listened very carefully the whole time. You're crazy. He sighed. Lucky it happened the way it did. That I found out. If the landlady finds out, you won't leave this house. Why should I? Walker was surprised. Because, He ran his hands through his hair. You're right. Katya was murdered. And it's so tricky that no pathologist will ever know why. But Kate wasn't Cynthia's only victim. Are you saying the landlady killed the girl? Madeline exclaimed. I suspected Dorian of that. He wanted to get rid of his annoying girlfriend. Bang! No. Dorian's a victim too. Of course, he's a total womanizer. I'm even a little jealous when he stares at you. Jealous, I mean. Daniel wrinkled his nose. And then what? The girl asked curiously, ignoring her boyfriend's state of mind. Let's start at the beginning. I came to work here for one reason. My mother was terminally ill. I needed expensive medicine treatment. Cynthia promised me a lot of money for my work. Of course I accepted. I quickly found a common language with the rest of the staff. I didn't know what was going on inside the mansion walls until I got to my first post. You were there a few minutes ago, Daniel frowned. And what did you see? Madeline shrieked. Don't shout like that. My staff might hear us. I saw Cynthia put something in Kate's glass. The girl didn't live a minute. It all happened in the cafeteria. The cameras recorded it. They made me erase it from the archives at the time. The police, of course, went through the hard drives, but to no avail. The Smiths promised me a large fee for my silence. Mother was getting worse, so there was nowhere to go. Kate's not the first girl. When I worked here, every time Doreen brought another pretty girl into the house, I knew she couldn't survive here. Cynthia would bite. Madeline couldn't believe her ears. How? Surely everyone knows there are murders in this mansion. The girl's parents, the servants, friends, relatives of the family, and they're all silent. But why would Cynthia do such a thing? The girls were rich, wealthy, intelligent, didn't smoke or drink alcohol. They must have dressed smartly too, because the lady of the house has been sick for a long time. The husband hides everything carefully. Sometimes, when it's really hard, he takes his wife to a boarding house. There she's treated and sent home again. After the hospital, Cynthia is unrecognizable. But some time passes and the devil comes back into her. She's jealous of her only son. The jealousy turns into schizophrenia. Oh my God, you don't say anything. Why couldn't you go and tell the police? So many innocent girls died because of your silence. Madeline was getting, well, I would have told them. And goodbye to my mother's peaceful and painless life. Haven't you ever had to sacrifice anything? Daniel asked in surprise. Madeline wondered. Whether or not one could or could not be judged for inactivity was a decision for the authorities. Time to get ready. We must tell Jane. Daniel seemed to read her thoughts. He held her tightly against him and whispered, "Yo, don't you dare. I won't let you go. You must think of other people." All the servants knew about Cynthia's antics. Are you going to tell everyone now, you white sheep? Madeline looked boldly into Daniel's eyes and lashed out with force. A moment more, and the guard was on the floor, pinned down tightly. I may look like a weak woman, but the urge to break free is definitely there, isn't it? Madeline said happily, sitting on the guard's back. Don't fight it. I'm not going anywhere yet. There's no official proof, and I didn't copy the data for nothing. I won't tell anyone about you, but I need you to help me with something. What is it? Daniel wheezed. He tried to pull the girl off of him, but he was unsuccessful. We have to team up and catch Cynthia doing something illegal together, or get the truth out of her. How do you want to get the truth out of her? Smith is a hard nut to crack. She'll keep her mouth shut even under torture. They don't go to jail for that sort of thing. Others will go to jail for them. Oh, Daniel grumbled as Madeline slid off him and sat down beside him. Shall we see about that? Or are you going to be an accessory and witness to her crimes from now on? You're a good guy. Yeah, so good that you even decided to get in bed with me. Because of the security cameras, growled the guy. But he agreed. Despite that horrible night, Daniel was still attracted to Madeline. A satisfied Walker walked out of the security building in the early morning hours. Daniel was at his post. He gave the girl a look and sighed. All because of women in this world. Madeline, sitting in her room, pondered her next steps. One would have to be very careful. She felt that one extra step and a trap for the detective was assured. There was no need to look for an excuse to piss off the landlady. It happened the next day. Madeline was cleaning the parlor when an excited cook came into the room. Follow me. She bellowed, her eyes round, as if she were afraid of being seen. Where are we going? Peggy, what happened? Walker whispered. Donnie asked me to bring you. He's in the backyard. If the guard runs into the house without a good reason, the missus will get suspicious. Come on, drop your mop. Peggy shoved the screaming girl out of the mansion. Madeline ran the rest of the way on her own. There he is, standing there, looking so handsome. The excitement made her hair stand on. What happened? Did you tell the landlady about me? Madeline almost choked on her feelings. Madeline clenched her hands into fists and threw herself at the guard. Daniel gripped Madeline tightly and waited for her to collapse from helplessness. Why are you fighting at once? I didn't tell you anything. I just wanted to warn you that something's going to happen tomorrow. Cynthia's plotting to get rid of Lexi and her own grandson. She came to me early this morning and offered me good money for my help, and you accepted. Madeline's face glistened with tears. I knew you were a freak, even for your own mother. I would have left my mother to die, but I wouldn't kill innocent people. I hate you. Daniel stopped her speech. No, of course not. I agreed, but only for the sake of discovering her personality, her sick essence, together with you. That's why we have to stop her together. Madeline had an epiphany. So that's what this is all about. The guard was very wise. What did she tell you? What's her plan? I'm gonna talk fast. They might see us. Daniel looked around quickly. Doreen doesn't know anything and can't know anything before we're done. Cynthia ordered me to go into the woods today and dig a deep hole. Clearly, she wants to bury Lexi. Get rid of her. Now listen, I've got an idea of what we're gonna do. We're gonna do it the smart way. I found a long and spacious box that Lexi can fit in. I'll make a hole in the crate and put a drain pipe in it. That way Lexi can breathe underground. The landlady will probably want to see if I buried her. Then, after 24 hours, as Lexi is buried alive, then we retrieve her. Lexi comes home to the Smiths, sees the fear in their eye. Next thing you know, it's riot police. How about that? Wow. I'm shocked. The girl whispered enthusiastically. You could be a born detective. Are we going to tell Lexi about our— Yes, but later. The main thing is not to spook her. As cruel as it is, Lexi will be bait for the big fish. Cynthia, Madeline, and Daniel discuss their plans for another half an hour. Walker must carry the recorder with her at all times and not be separated from it for a minute. There was no telling when the criminal would reveal her cards. Slowly it grew dark. Madeline's heart pounded loudly in her chest. Cynthia was surprisingly cheerful. You bet tomorrow was a holiday. New Year's Eve. Guests and friends would be coming. It's going to be fun. And the mistress will no longer worry about her unofficial daughter-in-law and grandson. Well, at least until the next time they meet. Today, Cynthia sent her husband and son out shopping for holiday gifts. What a stroke of luck. No one will have any idea what happened to Lexi. The hostess set the table herself and invited the girl to dine with her. Self to Madeline helped and retired to the kitchen on Cynthia's orders. Of course, no one must know of the crime. Peggy was trembling with fear, but Madeline reassured her. The detective knew what would happen next. The cunning hostess had slipped a strong dose of sleeping pills into the compote. Then it was all in Daniel's hands. Oh my God, I didn't know I was working for a killer. Making her food. If I'd known I would have slipped her something, Peggy hissed. It's time to bring her to justice. Let's pray that everything goes according to plan. Madeline Walker had told Brandon everything on the phone and had outside support. If anything went wrong and the girl didn't respond within 24 hours, Brandon was to call the police. Meanwhile, Lexi was already sound asleep, dropping her head on the couch. Cynthia, satisfied with her fine work, was cleaning up the evidence of the crime from the table. Through a crack in the door, Madeline saw Daniel quietly enter the dining room. He picked Lexi up in his arms like a fluff ball and walked toward the exit. The hostess called out for Madeline to clean the dishes and mop the floors. It's dusty in here, she murmured. Where did Lexi go? The housekeeper asked politely, trying not to pretend she knew. She was having dinner with you. Oh, those pregnant women are so weird. Lexi felt nauseous and went up to her room. Don't worry about her. It happens a lot to a girl in her condition, Madeline said with a sly look. Oh, I'm going upstairs after all. I'll see if she needs a doctor. Doreen called, asking how she was. Cynthia instantly turned pale. She cried out like a wounded animal. What kind of servants are they? Boorish and insolent. Honey, I told you, there's no need to bother Lexi. She's tired. Go do what you're supposed to do. Madeline, satisfied with Cynthia's reaction, silently cleaned up the dining room and hurried to the backyard where Daniel was supposed to be waiting for her. The guard was visibly nervous. Didn't anyone see you? He asked. What took you so long? I was cleaning up the dining room after dinner. UA Walker sighed. What's the deal? Daniel nodded and they got into the car. The guard checked on Lexi, who was sleeping like a baby. Shortly before this treacherous dinner, he had told the girl what was going to happen and how to act. Lexi was in deep shock, but agreed to help, and now she was going to stay in a damp box underground for 24 hours until New Year's Eve. Don't worry, I brought a bunch of warm blankets and a winter coat. Lexi's box will be warm. Madeline snuggled into her boyfriend's strong arm. Finally, it would all be over soon, and she would be out of this damn place. The winter forest greeted them with cold and snow. Large snowdrifts lay everywhere. Madeline felt a little uneasy. She imagined that she was the one being put into a box and covered with earth. The earth was pressing on her head, her chest, the box. What thoughts? We have to chase them away. Everything will be all right. The car stopped at the cozy Peggy's. Daniel got out and stood for a minute listening to the sounds of the forest. Oh, it's nice here in the summer. He mumbled. The girl didn't think so. What if there were more graves? What if the bloodthirsty mistress had set up a graveyard of girls here? I don't even think so. I don't think so. She replied. After the owner is arrested, we should gently hint to the investigating authorities that it would be a good idea to take a walk around and look at the mounds. Do you think so? Daniel said quietly. He took Madeline's hand and squeezed it tightly in his. The girl closed her eyes affirmatively. Not far from the car, under a willow tree, was a huge black hole. A massive wooden box stood. The guard carefully took out Lexi, who was sleeping soundly, wrapped in blankets, and put the girl in the box. He also threw an old fur coat on top. Madeline helped close the lid. You had to be good with a screwdriver. I'll just put a little earth on it, so it won't squeeze through the tree. I'll put more snow on top, Daniel said in a shaky voice. He put the long flow pipe into the hole he had made in the box and breathed a sigh of relief. It was all the right size. As wisps of frozen earth fell thuddingly against the lid of the box, Madeline felt like she was attending a real funeral. Just make sure Lexi doesn't get hysterical when she wakes up. Okay, it's done. I'm gonna camouflage the pipe a little bit and take some pictures for Cynthia. Then I'll open the pipe again. That's what he did. Madeline was uneasy. All the way home, she begged that Lexi wouldn't suffocate, that it would all be over sooner. Maybe with her nerves, she shouldn't be a detective anymore. A florist or an accountant would be much better. You can sit back and not be threatened. How could she have gotten herself in such a mess? Meanwhile, Brandon, her co-worker, who must also suffer and agonize, sits at home and devours a second box of pizza with sausage or cheese. Walker's musings were interrupted by Daniel's voice. That's it. Here we go. Madeline thought for a second. Then she asked decisively, "Can I stay with you tonight? I'm too scared to stay at home." Daniel smiled, and they walked toward the security building. Paradise Corner was glowing with colorful lights. The village had been busy since morning, and the guards were working hard. Relatives and friends of the rich were coming to the village in luxury expensive cars. In the middle of the Paradise Corner, the residents themselves installed a huge live Christmas tree, a joy for the next 2 or 3 weeks for the children of the Majors. The tree was decorated with colorful lanterns and big balls. The smell of goodies and kebabs wafted everywhere. The male part of the population traditionally roasted meat for New Year's tables. Only the Smith mansion did not light its holiday lights this morning. The house was in a frenzy. Dorian was throwing plates hysterically, Cynthia screaming pleadingly for him to stop. The servants gathered in the dining room and watched as the Smith son shamelessly destroyed the holiday sets. "Where's Lexi, you monster?" he yelled at his mother. "How many times have I told you to stop meddling in my life?" Another plate flew into the wall. Peggy groaned and sat down. She didn't really want to get hit in the forehead with the next piece of dishware. Madeline woke up on New Year's Eve morning in Daniel's arms. A strong wind was blowing through the window, small snowflakes flying. Here comes the last day in this hellish place. Then freedom, thought the girl. She kissed the sleeping guy and quickly got ready. I wonder what's in the Smith mansion. Doreen Madeline arrived at the house. She saw a stunning scene. Doreen packing his suitcase, Cynthia running from corner to corner with her hands clasped together, Vincent sitting in a chair, his face expressionless. Peggy was crying in a corner. Muse Scott was running after the landlady with valerian and ammonia. Fine, now we have to wait until evening, Walker thought. She could hear Muse Scott calling the guests and politely telling each one that the hostess was ill and the party at their house was canceled. Too bad. There would have been plenty of witnesses to Lexi's mysterious resurrection. Poor thing. Madeline found Daniel in the barn. "It's time," he said. "Wait, I'll get the car out and get a shovel. I'll get a thermos too. Poor thing's freezing. I'll get the tea." Madeline shouted and ran into the kitchen. Peggy was there. She was sobbing and huddled on the table. When the girl came into the room, the cook came up. "Cynthia knows all about your plans. She is looking all over the house for you. Run, my girl." Madeline turned around and wanted to open the door, but she was beaten to it. A strong and hard hand grabbed the girl by the scruff of the neck. It was Cynthia. She let out a victorious yell and dragged Walker upstairs. No, Madeline has to go after Lexi now. At least Peggy had warned Daniel. Let him go on his own, get the girl. While she distracts the old git. Cynthia shut the door noisily behind her and groaned in triumph. Oh, I know all about you, bitch. Who you are and why you came here. I'm not letting you out of here alive. Madeline remembered that she still had her tape recorder in her pants pocket. She decided not to waste any more time. Oh, come on. You're the one who hired me, Walker said wryly. The only thought in her head was, what a bunch of Adamsies. Disgusting. If I'd seen what could happen in that rich, old mansion earlier, I would never have worked there. Cynthia frantically searched the nightstand for her pills. She cursed irritably every time she failed to find the vial in the next locker. Abandoning her futile efforts, the woman walked over to the safe, opened the code lock, and pulled out a gun. If I had known who you were, I would have shot you in the agency. She hysterical, and believe me, I wouldn't have gotten anything for it. I'd have given money to the management, and they would have kept their mouths shut. What did you find out, you bitch? Just what I needed, Madeline replied and laughed. Tell me, how did you manage to cover up the mass murder of all the Doran girls? And more importantly, why did you do it? Cynthia quieted down and asked in a whisper, sitting down on the bed. How did you find out about it? I didn't tell anyone. Even my husband sometimes didn't know how I had to hide the corpses, so it was you who killed them? Well, not always. Kate did. I just overdid it with the poison. But the pathologist didn't even think to send the blood for poison testing. The rest of them were helped by drivers and guards, and with Lexi. Madeline said slowly, May, did you give her sleeping pills and bury her alive? Well, I was fine with Lexi at first. I thought Doreen would play with her and toss her aside like a toy. But he didn't. He got her pregnant. It was immediately clear that it had to end. Cynthia sighed noisily and scratched her temple with her pistol. Why are you asking me all this? You're not going to live anyway. You think you can sneak out of my house? The guards have served me well for a long time, so don't get your hopes up. Madeline decided to ask another question. Why? Why did you do all this? Isn't it nice for a mother to know that her son is a happy family man? Doreen tried to find his soulmate every time, but you wouldn't let him. I grew up in a rich family, Cynthia began. I had no siblings. My parents spoiled me all the time. I was used to having everything handed to me as a child. When I met Vidley, I realized that he would be mine too, forever. Doreen, though he grew up alone without brothers and sisters, didn't grow up like me. My son was the life of the party. He liked to give and share. Basically, he did all the things that pissed me off, and I was jealous of all those girls who wanted to take my son away from me. Yeah, I got rid of them hard, but I love my Doreen. Love can explain everything, but it's a sick love, Madeline sneered. You're sick. You need to stay in the clinic under lock and key. How many victims have died at your hands? Somewhere over 10 beauties. But I don't regret it one bit. They will only bring disappointment to me. What about Lexi? She carried your grandson. Lexi was a good girl, but she didn't know how to treat my Doran well. They were always fighting. Okay, we've talked enough. Don't worry, you won't suffer. Cynthia was about to point the gun at the frightened girl, but there was a noise and the sound of breaking glass downstairs. Another minute, and people rushed into the mistress' bedroom. Danielle, a pale Lexi, Doreen, and many more. Maji was among them. She cried, Madeline, are you okay? A guard rushed to the girl. Madeline was trembling, whether from fear or Lexi. The owner exclaimed, losing her mind. How did you get here? You're dead. The girl smiled sadly. Yes, I was supposed to be buried asleep. How cruel you have to be to get rid of yourself that way. Doreen went out into the corridor and shouted to someone, you can take it. It's all right. An assault team flew into the bedroom in full armor. They threw Cynthia to the floor. The woman did not resist. She only moaned and hurled angry curses. The investigation to solve the series of murders stretched on for a long time. Evil mistress of an ancient mansion killed more than one innocent girl, each one with particular cruelty. Vincent Taylor and Doreen Smith were also charged with covering up the crime and helping to facilitate the atrocity. Madeline was able to return home. The first thing she did was to call Jean. Good afternoon. This is Madeline Walker. I can now tell you that your case has been reopened. Kate did die, not die of natural causes. I will give you the address of the investigation team that is currently looking into this. Jody was grateful for the young detective's work. She even advised her acquaintances to contact Madeline Walker if suddenly need to solve an important and mysterious case. The entire staff of the mansion was fired and taken for long interrogations. Lexi had returned to her parents and was now enjoying her pregnancy. Never mind Doreen. Cynthia was placed in a mental institution where she was nursed back to health after the forest, at Madeline's request, had been completely checked and something terrible had been found there. In the thickest part of the forest, where it is difficult to pass without sticks or an axe, there were many bumps resembling graves. When the investigator, together with his team, exhumed the remains of the bodies, he confirmed that they were Doran's ex-girlfriends. Monica's daughter was among them. When the former washerwoman found out, she went to hospital with a heart attack. She could not calmly endure the fact that her favorite mistress ruthlessly massacred the only child of the servants. Also, traces of potent poisons were found in Cynthia's bedroom. The vials themselves were nowhere to be found. Apparently, the cunning landlady had hidden them or disposed of the evidence. Madeline and Daniel continued to date. The boy got a job at Madeline's agency and now helped the girl with everything. Brandon, when he found out that Madeline had found a lover, was not very much upset. At that time, he had already found a beautiful person from the kind of intellectuals and spent a lot of time in her company. Madeline Walker first time just lay in bed and enjoyed the tranquility. At last one could lie down and not have to clean anything. The girl was much interested in the details of the development of the case. How good that grief-stricken relatives were able to bury their children and calm down. After all, some had hoped for years that their daughters were missing. Madeline learns that Peggy, the cook at the mansion, has taken a job at the local bakery as a baker and is even successfully improving her bread baking skills. Brandon and Mila, Daniel, and Madeline sat in a cozy cafe at the intersection of the main streets. Walker loved this place. She'd often eaten the mouth-watering buns and croissants here before, but now she just enjoyed the good company. "Walker, you're the talk of the Paradise Corner." Brandon exclaimed happily, and all over the news. "You're a local celebrity now. You get the best-looking coffee cup. Oh, it doesn't matter what cup you drink from, as long as it tastes good," she said. Brandon laughed merrily. "When's the wedding, lovebirds?" He asked Daniel. He thought about it and said, "Why don't you ask Madeline? I keep calling her, but nothing. The fish aren't biting." Madeline didn't say anything. She knew that Daniel had received a letter from the police calling him in for questioning as a defendant. The thought that her boyfriend could be sentenced to prison made it hard to make any further plans for his life. Daniel realized it himself, so he didn't stress the girl with his desire to create a family. "It'll be okay," he said with a look at Madeline, and she winked. When the investigation into Daniel's involvement in the abuse and murder of girls began, the prosecution got its way. The guy was facing 2 years in a maximum security penal colony. Madeline agreed to wait for him and not meet anyone. It was a cold winter day. All the holidays had passed Madeline by, so she decided to catch up and have a small New Year's Eve party at home. When the girl finished, she was satisfied with her work. A small Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with homemade toys. Madeline, living alone, did not celebrate holidays at home. A couple of salads, tangerines, and a bottle of champagne were on the table. Madeline took another look around the room and was pleased with herself. "Oh, what a hostess I am," she said to herself. The doorbell rang. There she was, standing there, red with frost, holding a box with a red bow. "Maggie." The girl rushed to hug her friend. The former cook had become close friends with Walker, and Madeline often invited her for walks and visits. Now Peggy came into the house and filled it with her laughter, her lively smile, and her joy. "Do you think Daniel will come back as he was before the colony?" Madeline asked Peggy. She was silent for a moment, finished her salad, and answered, "You know, everything in life is fair. A lot of people have relatives die, but that doesn't give a man absolutely no right to take the lives of others. In fact, Daniel, like Cynthia, is a killer. It's good for him to realize that, and also that when he gets out of prison, he remembers what he did and doesn't repeat his mistakes." Madeline sighed and drank her glass of champagne in a gulp. She wished that all the people in whom anger and hatred lived would one day realize that it was possible to live differently and appreciate every minute. The snow fell and fell. The friends were laughing loudly. Next year promised to be even more